Today, we are going to talk about something super important, which is finding your first place in Canada. I know, looking for a new apartment in a new country can feel a bit overwhelming, but I promise you're not alone in this journey. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to hunt for your perfect spot, what documents you'll need, and how to avoid the common pitfalls that trip up so many newcomers. So let's dive in. First things first, let's break down what the rental market actually looks like in Canada. So in Canada, you have a bunch of different options. The first one, apartments or condos. These are high-rise buildings that are most common in city centers. There are also basement suites. These are budget-friendly options, and it's usually in the lower level of someone's house. Then there are houses or townhouses, and these are more common in the suburbs, and you can rent the whole house. And then there's also room rentals, which is just when you rent a room inside of somebody's house. And this is perfect if you're just landing and you need something affordable and fast. Now let's talk about money. Renting Canada might be a shock if you're coming from certain countries. The rental market definitely depends on where you're moving to. For example, if you are in Toronto or Vancouver, rent prices can be pretty high. Whereas if you're in smaller cities or towns, you will find more affordable options. So remember, where you're landing definitely impacts your rent that you're going to pay. In Toronto, you can expect to pay around $2,500 for a one bedroom. In Vancouver, up to $2,800 for a bedroom. In Montreal, it's a bit more affordable for about $1,700 for a one bedroom. And in Calgary and Ottawa, maybe look between the middle, between $1,800 and $2,200. And this is for a one bedroom apartment in their downtown core. So it is a bit expensive, but here's the hack. If you move just about 30 minutes away from downtown, prices can drop by like 20 to 30%. So if you're cool with a condo outside of downtown or a basement apartment or sharing with roommates, you're definitely going to be able to save a bit more. If you do decide that you want to live alone, you can expect to spend between 30 to 40% of your income on just housing if you're living in a major city. And unfortunately, that is just how it is in Canada right now. So yeah, renting in Canada is not cheap, but don't panic. I'm gonna walk you through how to find a place that fits within your budget. So I want you to pull out your phones because here are some websites or apps that you can download to find places in different cities across Canada. First, you can look at realtor.ca. This is a good place to find listings from licensed agents. There's also a Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji, which is great for finding private rentals where the landlord is just posting their rental online. But you really need to beware of scams, and I'll talk about that a bit more soon. There's also Zumper or PadMapper or rentals.ca, and these are apartment search tools that allow you to filter by price and location. And also, you never want to underestimate asking friends, colleagues, and community groups because oftentimes people have vacancies at their place and they just want somebody that they know personally to live there. Also, some landlords are very old school. I know, especially when I lived at my university, I saw this a lot where these landlords will put a for rent sign in the window. So if you're looking for places in person, you can also keep an eye for that. Lastly, I think joining Facebook groups in your city is perfect. So search the city name and housing or rentals for newcomers in city name, so Toronto housing, for example. And by doing this, you can find communities that are sharing listings or people that are actually looking for roommates. A pro tip is that if you are looking for places, you always want to set up alerts on those websites that I mentioned. The good places definitely go fast because we have more demand than there is supply right now. There are lots of people in Canada, but not so many apartments and houses that are up. So the supply goes very fast. And when I say fast, I mean it could be listed in the morning and gone by the afternoon fast. But you also need to watch out for scams. If, for example, someone won't let you see the place in person or they ask for money before signing anything, these are major red flags and you should never, ever send money without seeing a place and signing a lease. One more way that you can find a place, and I think this is the most underrated way, is by hiring a realtor. You meet with the realtor, you tell them your requirements, and then they will send you listings that fit the bill. And the best part is that they don't charge a fee. They actually take their commission from the landlord who is renting the place to you. So I honestly think this would be one of the best ways to find a place. It could take a bit longer, but they definitely are the experts and you don't have to pay them, so why not? Okay, now let's talk about paperwork. When you are renting from a Canadian landlord, they typically want to see a lot of documentation, especially from newcomers. So here are some that you may need to provide. 1, ID or passport. They just want to prove that you are who you say you are, of course. 2, proof of income. They typically want to see that you are making a certain amount of money that you are claiming that you are making. So this may be a pay stub, a job offer letter, or even your bank statements. 3, a credit report. So this is something that can get a bit tricky for newcomers. And if you watch a few videos up, and I'll link it in the description, I will tell you all about your credit report. But because newcomers typically don't have much history in the country, this can be a bit tricky for them. And lastly, references. So some landlords will ask for references from your previous landlords or your previous employers. And I know you may be thinking, Reni, I just got here. I don't have half of these things. Well, don't stress. This is where you can really get a bit creative. A few ways that people get around this is that they offer to pay several months' rent in advance. I technically don't think landlords should be allowed to accept this or that it is right, but this is a way that a lot of people are able to get around those requirements that they may not meet. Also, some people find a guarantor. So somebody else who lives in Canada that has good credit, they will sign on your behalf saying that they guarantee that if you do not pay, they will pay on your behalf. But somebody has to really, really trust you in order to be your guarantor. Another way would just be to show that you have substantial savings in your bank account. So hopefully as you're moving to Canada, you have substantial savings and then you can just show that to the landlord and hopefully they will trust you enough to help you and without having strong credit history. Now let's talk about how you actually pay for your rent. In Canada, rent is usually paid monthly, not weekly or annually like it is in some other countries. And what happens when you get an apartment is that landlords typically ask for your first month and your last month's rent upfront. As for how you pay them, most landlords prefer that you send an e-transfer or a post-dated check or even direct deposits. So those are a few options of how you can pay for your rent. Now here's how the application process typically works. First, you view the property, and when you are viewing the property, really take videos of everything because trust me, you will forget details. You should also test all appliances, water pressure, cell phone reception, and check for if there's any damage from water or even pests as well. If you do see any of this, write down any of the existing damage that you see and bring it to the attention of the landlord now before you move in so that you are not blamed later. The second thing is that you're going to submit your application. So just be prepared to fill out all the forms that they may have on the spot. So all those documents that I mentioned earlier, just have them accessible on your phone when you are going for the viewing. If you don't hear back from the landlord within 24 hours, feel free to follow up. And if you are approved, then you will do the lease signing. When it comes to the lease signing, it's really important that you read every single line of your lease. There's typically a standard lease that landlords use, but some of them are sneaky and put things in there that they're not supposed to have there. So just make sure that you are reading every single line of your lease. When you're reading your lease, a few things that you should look out for are 1, how long is the lease for? Most of them are 12 months here. 2, what is included? So some places may cover your heat, your water, or even Wi-Fi, and it's important to have that listed on the lease. Also, they may give you rules for how many roommates you can have, if you can sublet your lease to other people, or if you can have pets as well. Though I don't think they're actually allowed to discriminate unless they have an allergy, but a lot of landlords don't care. One of the biggest mistakes that I think you can make is to not understand your lease. So if something isn't clear, make sure you ask. And this is where it's helpful to work with a realtor because they will make sure that the lease is up to code as well. Never feel pressured to sign that lease on the spot. It's definitely okay if you take that lease home and then review it first. And now, again, back to the money. Let's talk about utilities. In some rentals, they are included in your rent, whereas in other rentals, you will pay separately. So this can really add to the cost of your housing. Utilities to consider can be electricity, heat, water, and internet. And most people budget around $100 to $200 extra on top of your rent per month if they're not included in your rent, right? So don't forget about this when you are budgeting for your place. And also don't forget about tenant insurance. Tenant insurance is usually, I would say, $10 to $30 monthly, and it protects your stuff in case a fire, a flood, or another disaster happens in your home. And speaking of bills, this is where Lemfi, the sponsor of this episode, comes in handy. So when you need to transfer your money from your home country to cover those initial costs that may come up, Lemfi offers great rates with zero transfer fees. So if you want to send money to or from Nigeria, Kenya, or any of 10 African countries, it's as easy as sending a text. There's zero transfer fees, transfers are received in minutes, and there's a great exchange rate. And you will get $10 when you send a transfer of $100 or more. So just use my code EXORENI. Okay, now back to the video. Now, one of the most important sections of this video is that you need to know your rights as a tenant. To be very real, some landlords take advantage of newcomers because they don't know their rights. So let me put you on to some game. In Canada, your landlord can't randomly kick you out. They can't increase your rent drastically or barge into your apartment whenever they want. The tenant rights do vary by province, so just check your local laws. But for example, in Ontario, rent increases are capped annually if your property was built before 2018. So your landlord can't just say they're increasing your rents by $700. There are rules, and you need to know those rules, or else the landlord will likely take advantage. Also in Ontario, landlords need to give at least 24 hours before they enter your place. So that's another rule that you should know so that they don't take advantage. And if you ever have issues, it's important for you to know that you can report them to the landlord-tenant board in your province. In Ontario, they're called the Landlord and Tenant Board. In BC, they're called the Residential Tenancy Branch. In Quebec, it's a French word that I will put on the screen. In Alberta, it's the Residential Tenancy Dispute Resolution Service. So there are lots of different options that you can look into, which depending on the province that you are in. But again, figure out the appropriate one in your city and contact them for assistance if you ever need it. Now let's talk about scams. There are lots of red flags to look out for in rentals, and here are some that I think you should look into. First one, the rent is too cheap for that area. If it's too good to be true, it likely is. Two, if they ask you for money before you show up to the place, red flag, don't do it. Number three, they won't meet you in person or do a video call. Another red flag. And again, if they pressure you to send money immediately, it is a scam. Please run away. A helpful tip that I learned was if you Google the place or search on TikTok, search the name of the building or the address on TikTok. A lot of people have exposed these landlords on TikTok. I'm also in a group called the Landlord and Tenant Group on Facebook in Ontario, and they give tips on like landlords to watch out for, tenants to watch out for. So that's another place you could look for information. Again, remember, if it feels sketchy, trust your gut and don't send any money up front. Always visit that unit before you pay. If you are somebody who is still back home and just planning your move to Canada, and let's say you want to have a home ready for you by the time you land, I would say you still should not get that place without somebody looking at the place for you. So if you have a friend or a family member that's already here, they can go and look at the place for you in person. Or this would be a great place where a realtor could be of great help, where they can go and look on your behalf. Also, I think it's important to not be in a rush when you first move here. You don't have to move here with a place sorted for you. You may save a lot of money by actually staying in an Airbnb for a few weeks or even a month, so you can see if you actually like the area before you commit to a 1-year lease. So that was a lot of information, but now you are ready to find your perfect rental in Canada. So to recap, you just want to make sure you research rental prices, you search in the right places on those websites that I mentioned, you have your documents ready, and you know your rights. And most importantly, please stay alert for scams because they are rampant. If you found this video to be helpful, I would really appreciate if you would like this video, subscribe. Also share this video with somebody else that may benefit from it, a newcomer that's coming to Canada as well. And turn on your notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. In the next episode, we will be talking about buying your first car in Canada and what you should expect. So I hope to see you in the next video. See you next time. Bye.